Hello, welcome to our November subcommittee meeting. Thank you all for joining us. Councilwoman Stark is here and Councilman Waring is here on the phone. So we'll begin. We do not have any requests to speak on the call to public, so we'll begin with the meeting minutes from October 26th.
Move to approve.
Second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, I think that passes 3-0. We have a consent agenda for today's meeting. Did folks have an opportunity to review the consent agenda? And if so, we have a motion. Councilman Valenzuela?
Yes.
Good morning.
Okay. Right, I move the consent agenda. Items 2, 3 is just for information.
We have a second on the consent agenda.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
The federal housing opportunities, the consent agenda.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I will second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Passes 3-0. Do we have 4-0? Are we good?
I'm sorry, was that for me?
No, I think it passed unanimously.
Yeah, right.
There's information about workers' compensation for everyone to review. And we move on to agenda item 4, our greenhouse gas emission update. And welcome our Office of Environmental Programs to give us an update.
Good morning, Chairwoman. Good morning, members of the subcommittee. Joe Giudice with the City's Office of Environmental Programs. So thank you for allowing us to come here today and share with you our final progress report towards our 15% goal for greenhouse gas reductions, the target that was established. I want to introduce Dr. Rushforth from Arizona State University. He drew the short straw and gets to join me at the table.
Welcome. Glad to have you. Thank you for your help.
Also want to introduce Dr. Rajesh Bush, also from Arizona State University, and graduate student Kiki Hooten, who probably did a lot of the work on this project for us. And I also want to recognize Joe Gibbs from our Office of Environmental Programs, who also helped out on this inventory. So a brief history. In 2009 or 2008, the City Council established an initial goal to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 5%, setting for city operations, and I also want to be clear about that. So this particular goal is about what we do in the city of Phoenix and our emissions impacts, and the goal was to reduce those. And so that set Phoenix on this path. In 2009, the initial 2005 baseline inventory was completed, and the city also completed, along with its partner, a action plan for how to achieve that goal. In 2012, we did a temperature check to see how we were doing in meeting our goal, and we discovered that we had already achieved a 7.2% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. So council in their infinite wisdom said, well, we need a more aggressive goal and establish a 15% target for the year 2015 for us to achieve. And so that brings us to today. So we have been able to report, or we're pleased and excited actually to report that we achieved our goal of, actually we achieved a 15.6% reduction. That 0.6% seems to really be very important. And so I just want to share with you a little bit from this slide. Initially, when we did the baseline inventory, the dash line, the green dash line, represents what was projected to be our greenhouse gas emissions if the city didn't take any action and based on our history of emissions growth. The baseline year is represented as the black line for 2005. The yellow line represents the original goal of a 5% reduction. And then I want to focus on that bottom line, which represents really our measured action. So you have our 2012 measured 7.2% reduction, and now in 2015, our measured 15.6% reduction. Okay, so this chart will represent emissions reporting by sector, and then the magnitude of the changes in each sector is represented visually on the chart. And I'm just going to focus, for the sake of time, on the four major areas where we had emissions reductions, but if you have any questions about the other areas, I'd be happy to answer those. Fugitive and process emissions essentially is our landfill and our wastewater treatment plant processes, and these are generally methane generation at those facilities. So our State Route 85 landfill has one of the more advanced methane gas capture systems of all Subtitle D landfills that I'm familiar with. And so it's able to achieve a very high recovery rate of methane that's generated. So we were able to reduce process emissions significantly by the installation of that system. Our Water Services Department, as I think you are aware, is aggressively pursuing both energy efficiency improvements, and I also want to point out a good portion of this savings was the result of the installation of the Lake Pleasant water treatment plant solar system at Lake Pleasant. Then the next category is buildings and electricity, and that's just other general buildings and electricity reductions that we've been able to realize over this 10-year period. And then fleet fuels, I think it's really important to point out, we have one of the best alternative fuel programs in the country and have had that for a number of years. And in fact, even our 2005 baseline probably was reduced because of all the efforts that we had in advance of that baseline in terms of the compressed natural gas that we used, et cetera. But we were able to continue that progress in this 10-year period and continue to reduce emissions from our fuel supply. So just a couple of quick other things to point out. In addition to realizing benefits in carbon emission reductions, these greenhouse gas improvements, oftentimes with these implementation of these strategies, we're able to reduce dust pollution, we're able to reduce ozone pollution, NOx pollution. So there's multiple benefits, even direct health impact benefits to our community. I also would be remiss if I didn't point out that our utility partners, APS and SRP, played a critical role here, because as they continue to move to our alternative fuel supply that's less carbon intensive, we benefit because the power we purchase has less carbon in it, and that helps us achieve our goal for city operations. So we're going to be recommending today adoption of a new goal for the next 10-year period, being that we have completed this 10-year period's goal. And in thinking about this, we want to make sure we align with the 2050 environmental goals that this council adopted earlier this year in April. And in particular, in the goal area of buildings and land use is where this greenhouse gas emissions most properly fits, although frankly it crosses even some of our transportation and other pathways. And so even though these 2050 goals are a community-wide goal, one of our commitments in that discussion was the city needs to lead the way in its own operations. And so by establishing a new goal for us, that's our effort for the city to lead the way. So staff has been modeling the types of actions that we can be working on and programs that are in place. I think you're familiar with the LED streetlight replacement program, an exciting program that's going to get underway here shortly. I've talked already about alternative fuels. We see great opportunities to continue expansion of that with the development of electric vehicles and the continued improvement in that technology over the coming years. We're going to continue to be pursuing reductions in emissions related to building electricity consumption, additional solar power projects, and then of course the Hoover Power Agreement. I think you're also familiar with that Water has been able to enter into for I think a 50-year term. And then we have some other exciting projects like, for example, 91st Avenue's effort to take its biogas and convert that into a fuel supply will also be a benefit to greenhouse gas reduction. So we're calling on these actions as well as continued effort by our utility providers to achieve this next 10-year goal that we are recommending. So moving on to the final recommendation, we're recommending the establishment of a new greenhouse gas reduction goal to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by the year 2025, compared to our 2005 emissions, again, specific for city operations. I do want to point out that our Environmental Quality Commission supports the establishment of this goal and also is recommending that once we have the community-wide inventory complete, we have a further discussion about establishing a 2025 community-wide greenhouse gas emission goal. So our plan would be to come back to you early next year once we have that completed and be able to talk about a goal at that time. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Madam Chairman, if I could just add.
Please.
It is critical that Phoenix lead the way as we work toward the community meeting the 2050 sustainability goals. And this is a terrific example of when you set a goal and you set that target for staff, they work hard and they achieve, if not overshoot. And so I'm very proud of the city staff and the work that we've done. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out, as former Councilman Gates used to say over and over again, that these efforts, in addition to reducing greenhouse gas and having air quality benefits, also in most cases save the city money. So lots of good news here. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. There are plenty of efforts like building energy efficiency that really would make sense without this goal, but help us achieve it. And I remember when we were first talking about the goal, and 1 megawatt was a huge amount of solar, and we didn't know if it was achievable. It was a huge stretch at the time, whether we could go forward, and many people said it wasn't doable, and we rose to the occasion, so congratulations. We do have one card, Diane Barker.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson here. Kate Gallegos, Diane Barker. I reside in downtown Phoenix and enjoyed seeing the people turn out for Meet Me Downtown. And that is to, help the area in the sustainability, to walk, to build up the fitness, and to see, what we can personally do to cut down on emissions. The vehicles bring in not only the stirring up of particulates, but the ozone and like that. There's a Maricopa trip reduction, of which the city of Phoenix, has some goals. It's only 5%. It's nothing as assertive as this. And from what I've seen, the city does good things as far as, help employees get to work without paying for going on the lesser emission buses. But I don't see where there are drawings and there are gifts and there's more advertising to really let people know that it's volunteering worldwide. If we had more participation, it'd be a better world. So I want you to look into that if you would. And also, I saw in your goals the building electricity, but I remember for the last couple of years we spend around $70 million for electricity, and that has not gone down. So I want you to qualify that particular thing and see if we can do better in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Council members on the phone, any comments or questions?
I asked a question, but I don't need to go first unless you're ready for me.
I think you get to go first.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. So just a couple questions. So first of all, this goal is not applying this goal to the business community, SSRP or anybody else, right? It's just for city operations.
Chairwoman, Councilman Waring, that is correct. This goal is just for city operations.
Sorry, go ahead.
Nope, that was my answer to your question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought something else. So, I'm sorry, it's a little bit of feedback, I apologize. So this encompasses the goal we've already reached, and also does not change our goal going forward. I guess a different way to put it is we've got plans, LED lighting and other things, but it's not prescribing other plans we may have apart from what we've already agreed to as a council.
I'm sorry, I caught the beginning part of that question. I did miss the back end of
Yeah,
that
I'm
question.
sorry. I'm not getting feedback, so I'm hearing my own question, so it's tricky. I will try to get, no, I apologize. So we are not, in this vote, coming up with new plans like LED lighting, et cetera. Those are encompassed in our goal. So those will help us get to our goal. What we've already done helps us get to our goal. But we're not necessarily setting up new programs to do today. This vote only sets up a new goal.
Councilman Waring, that is correct.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. That's it, Madam. Thanks.
Wonderful, thank you. And I have a question for Dr. Rushforth. Thank you for joining us and for your work on this. Was there anything we did that you thought was particularly valuable or might be useful for other cities to know about?
I think as Joe mentioned, the advanced collection systems that have been put in place at the SR 85 landfill have gone a long way to helping reduce emissions over time.
Wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
And a win for the neighbors of the landfills as well. And we're going to be doing some more advanced collection with our water treatment plants as well. So building on that, you could argue that's building on that success as well, because that's not yet, we have not yet captured, so that's something to look forward to.
That has been, Madam Chairman, the biogas collection at the 91st Avenue wastewater treatment plant has been approved by council. We're finalizing, or I think we've actually signed the contract for that, and construction is imminent. So yes,
So that's something we have to look forward to in our next update.
I believe so, yes.
And Chairwoman, just a point of clarification. In the model that is done, when we talk about the capture system, so in a landfill in particular, the methane is being generated in the landfill, so it's the gas collection, and then we have a control system to actually burn it and make sure we're not emitting pollutants. But the capture system is basically keeping from methane escaping out of the landfill. So at 91st Avenue, they are also capturing the gas that's generated. In this case, they're also going to be converting that into a renewable resource and using it as a fuel supply, I believe is the plan. So that adds further benefit. In addition to capturing it and not allowing it to escape into the atmosphere, it's going to be substituting for some fossil fuel use somewhere. And we'd like to do the same thing at our State Route 85 landfill, not only capture it very efficiently, but also reuse what we've captured.
Wonderful. So we're actively pursuing a partner at the landfill to help us. Oh,
Madam Chairman, the Public Works Department is actively researching and working toward coming forward with something in that regard, yes.
wonderful. Lots to look forward to
Yes.
today. Well, this is very exciting. I remember when we started, it was a real concern about whether we could make it or not. And we did not have all the answers at this time, but it feels like we have a lot more knowledge now and are getting better at this, trying to lead the way. So thank you. Any other council member questions? Are we ready for a motion?
Motion to approve staff recommendation.
And I'll second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you for the great partnership with ASU, and look forward to seeing what innovations come next, helping Phoenix lead the way. We now move on to item number 5, our 2017 state and federal agenda, and welcome our government relations team. And I understand that John Wayne Gonzalez is celebrating a birthday today, so happy birthday.
Good morning. I'm Tom Remus with the Office of Government Relations. Joining me today is John Wayne Gonzalez, whose birthday it is, who manages our state program, and James Orlowski, who manages our federal program. We're here today to provide a brief update on our proposed state and federal agenda with topics that do fall under this subcommittee. We're looking today for your input, discussion, and possible action to include these items in our final report that will be brought to you at the December policy meeting. The items that we've included in our agenda today are submitted by the city departments, reviewed by staff, And additionally, our office has worked to set up meetings with you and your staff to provide additional input. As we move forward, there's still time to add items into the state and federal agenda, but today we're here to present to you what we have now. With that, I will turn it over to Mr. Gonzalez to start the state program.
As always, we start off the legislative session with reaffirming our guiding principles. And those guiding principles are in front of you. Of course, opposing any unfunded mandates, definitely preserving local control, making sure that the mayor and council have that authority to make the decisions they need to be made without state interference. Of course, protecting revenue sharing. That is a third of our city's general fund budget, and that's really critical. And then, of course, given what's going on with the Colorado River, an item that's really important is protecting our water resources. So that's very critical for our residents and for all of us. There are two items that were brought forward by the sustainability program or office. And there are a couple items that we're going to seek support, and one of them is the PACE program. We're supporting PACE-like programs. PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy, and there are over 30 states that have some type of legislation that allows for property owners to create improvement districts. And then those improvement districts would collect the property taxes needed to then support renewable energy, clean energy, water conservation on their properties. It could be residential, it could be commercial. So it could pay for things like solar panels, or it could pay for water harvesting for certain properties. So if there are efforts that are going to be introduced at the legislature, staff would like to support those efforts. Second is the continuation of the AG1 program, the Alternative Generation Program at the Arizona Corporation Commission. 4 years ago, the Corporation Commission created a pilot program that allowed large energy users to use a third-party broker to purchase lower cost energy. Phoenix was part of that program, one of the original 8 entities that's participating. And since the inception of the program, staff estimates that the city has saved $8 million in energy costs. That program is set to expire in July of next year, if not renewed. And so efforts are underway to, again, work with the Corporation, other entities working with the Corporation Commission to see if that can be extended. And with that, staff would definitely want support those efforts, given the benefits that we've received under this program. And so those are the two items that have been brought forward on state issues. And never mind. Thanks for reminding me. There's one more, and we had an addition to this item. It's not in your report, but we did add it in the PowerPoint slides, and that is the settlement with the clean diesel, the Volkswagen clean diesel issue. Arizona stands to receive a certain amount of money, millions of dollars, for clean diesel, clean air projects, and definitely staff would seek the approval of the mayor and council to go forward and try to work with the state to make sure that Phoenix is in a good position, or the Phoenix region is in a good position to receive some of those dollars that will help us for air quality programs in the region. And so that's the other item. And now, hand it over to Mr. Orlowski for the federal.
Thanks, John. Good morning. Like on the state side, we have sort of our guiding principles that guide everything that we do with our federal advocacy. Similar to the state side, the first is promoting fiscal sustainability. The key here with our federal program is trying to get Phoenix's fair share of federal funding. As I'll allude to later in the presentation, in a lot of instances, we're sort of disadvantaged compared to East Coast communities, cold weather sort of communities. And so we want to make sure that Phoenix gets our fair share, as well as oppose any unfunded mandates that may come down from the federal government. Also, we want to protect local authority and oppose efforts to preempt decisions that are made here locally at the city level. In terms of our housing department priorities, it includes a whole raft of issues similar to what you've seen in past years. I do want to note that we did get a really important grant for the city, which was the Choice Neighborhoods Grant. We got $1.5 million from HUD to make some important revitalization changes in the East Lake community, and so I just wanted to highlight that. We also talk about our home program funding, Section 8, the Public Housing Operating Subsidy and Capital Fund, which are important to being able to provide that affordable housing for low-income members of the community. And then also the Rental Assistance Demonstration, or RAD program, in Moving to Work, which posed some interesting opportunities for the city to sort of streamline our operations and to do some more efficient things. We want to support and look to expand those programs so that Phoenix might be able to participate down the road. In terms of neighborhood services, like I mentioned, one of our really big issues each and every year is CDBG, which is the Community Development Block Grant funding that the city receives. We receive approximately $14.5 million on an annual basis. That number's gone down over past years, and again, Phoenix, compared to some East Coast older communities, we don't feel like we get our fair share of funding, and so we want to make sure that we're advocating that going forward, if there are ways that we can maybe reform the fund formula for that funding, that we're doing that to make sure that Phoenix gets our fair share. We also talk about the lead-based paint hazard control grant and Healthy Homes program, as well as weatherization assistance program. Again, some really great funding that we get from the federal government that help us sort of protect and serve low-income residents. We did get, back in 2014, a $3 million lead-based paint hazard control grant. So again, we want to make sure that we're looking for those opportunities in the future. With our Human Services Department issues, again, these are really critical programs that provide funding for services that benefit sort of the most needy members of our community, whether it's homelessness and some of the continuum of care funding that we get, the homeless assistance grants. We want to make sure that we're able to provide, those programs, whether it's permanent supportive housing or what have you. We want to make sure that that funding continues to come to the city. We also talk about LIHEAP. Again, it's another instance in which we feel like Phoenix doesn't get our fair share, and so it's continuing to fight that battle. And then the Older Americans Act, which provides funding for things like Meals on Wheels and some of those services that are really critical for seniors. And with the city doing a lot in that regard, we just want to make sure that we're continuing to fight for funding for those programs. From our Community and Economic Development Department, the big issue in this area is workforce development, and specifically the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, making sure that we continue to get that funding. With that funding, CED is able to provide services not just to members of the community that are unemployed, but also services to employers, helping pair them up with potential employees. And so it's really important that we continue to get that funding both for job seekers and employers. And the big thing there is we want to support that funding and also the flexibility to make decisions at a local level that best serve our businesses and our community. And then finally, the last slide that I have for you are some of our sustainability goals. Again, similar to last year, but things that were brought forward by our Chief Sustainability Officer, which include the urban tree canopy, as well as electric vehicle infrastructure, resiliency, and renewable energy. And I would say with regards to these items, with the new administration coming in, we just want to look for opportunities to partner with federal agencies, whether it's funding or programmatic things. We want to look for ways to partner with them to try to move forward some of our sustainability goals and issues here at the city.
Madam Chair, with that, we are open to questions, input, and finally, a motion from this committee for action on these items.
Wonderful, thank you. And I was excited about the addition of the Volkswagen Settlement, because I think that is a settlement that many people who had Volkswagens are Phoenix residents, and we want to make sure that we get our fair share. And I've heard there's been discussion about vehicle electrification as being something that both the private sector and the city might be able to partner together to spend some of those monies on. So that works well with several pieces of this subcommittee's agenda, and I'm glad we'll be at that table. Council member questions?
I have a question. So these are recommendations, but we're not quite sure whether some of these will be grants. This is just more on principle. Given the new administration, maybe some of this goes away, and so we're just looking at an agenda if, in fact, there are grants available that we should pursue them.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Stark, you are correct. When we put together our federal agenda, it's those goals and those objectives of the city. And so we oftentimes put in there priorities that we look for opportunities. And we want to make sure that the council gives the blessing that we should be looking for those types of opportunities.
Thank you.
And there might be private foundations that might support some of this work as well, and since your office manages grants.
Madam Chair, that is correct.
I think we, particularly on sustainability, we've been successful with the foundation community. Wonderful. Council members on the phone, any questions?
No, Madam Chair. I'm ready. I can make the motion if you'd like.
And I'll turn to Karen Peters.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There is a conflict in your materials about whether this is agendized for action. I think in an abundance of caution, perhaps we should just provide input. This will be incorporated into the legislative agenda that is going to be put to the full council in December. These items will, subject to input, be put forward.
Wonderful. So we do not need a motion today. I'm also hearing a lot from the community about the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act and making sure we make full use of that. There's broad consensus that the community cares about high-quality jobs and wants the city to do our part with every tool we have to continue to invest in the economy. So I think significant interest in that item as well. I don't have any further comments and no cards, so with that, thank you for your presentation.
All right, thank you.
We have no further cards from the public. So I think we move to future agenda items. Do any council members have requests for future agenda items? Wonderful. With that, we are adjourned.